Bizarre Brain Comics. Hello, and welcome to Bizarre Brain Comics. This is where I like to take a look at some older comics, talk a little bit about the characters and creators, and then examine the stories and the art. What I want to take a look at this time is this book here from Marvel Comics, 1984. The Fantastic Four, number 271. This is written and illustrated by John Byrne. And the only reason I wanted to do this is because I did, a few months ago, I did another Fantastic Four written and illustrated by John Byrne. And while I was talking about that, I happened to mention this one because this particular issue, because it's got a big flashback sequence, and it's like a tribute to the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby Giant Monster comics from the 50s and early 60s. And if you've watched my channel for any length of time, you probably know I really like those Giant Monster comics. And the Kaiju stuff in general, like Ultraman. I did Ultraman. The Godzilla stuff. I did one on Godzilla, and of course King Kong, and Gorgo. Yeah, Gorgo, the monster from the deep. So of course this is written and drawn by John Byrne, and I'm going to primarily focus just on the that flashback sequence mostly. John Byrne, he did a great job on his run on the Fantastic Four, because I really liked it, and he was a big fan of the Lee Kirby era of the Fantastic Four, which I also really like. And I don't think anyone has ever done justice to the Fantastic Four from that era, and John Byrne has probably come the closest. Of course, I haven't been following the Fantastic Four in years, but I occasionally pick something up from the more recent years and read it, and I'm sure I enjoy it, but it's nothing compared to the Lee Kirby or John Byrne eras in the Fantastic Four. No. Let's join John Byrne in his interpretation of the Fantastic Four and the Giant Monsters. Woo! And here you can see this thrilling cover illustration by John Byrne. Very, very Kirby-esque monster here. It's from 1984. And if you were... You may or may not be as interested in the giant monsters like I am, but I really like them, as I said before. And I guess a lot of the people at Marvel, at least in the earlier days, and even some of the fans like them too. And a good chunk of that stuff has been rolled into Marvel canon, because some of the monsters have come back. Like, of course, the dragon Fin Fang Foom, which was a standalone monster story with a sequel, and was then rolled into the Marvel superhero universe canon by making him a villain, recurring villain for I think it was Iron Man, if I remember correctly. And he has been come back many times in many forms. Has even been in some of the animated shows. And of course, Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy was originally a giant monster. And he's come back. And of course, then they even had a miniseries of the Monster Hunters, which I plan on talking about sometime in the future, which takes place before the Age of Marvels, during the giant monster stuff, and is tied to the Fantastic. I mean, because it has all these reprises a lot of the monsters, or at least several of the monsters from that monster era in their comics, and is tied to the Fantastic Four because one of the characters in that storyline becomes the Mole Man. That's after that storyline. He becomes the Mole Man. Of course, the Mole Man was the first villain that the Fantastic Four fought against in Fantastic Four #1, 1963, by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. And of course, and remember, there was at that time Marvel, Atlas was known primarily for their monster comics, and they only had a few titles that they were able to distribute each month, and DC was doing it, and they could, at that time, they really couldn't do superheroes, so they kind of disguised their earliest superheroes as monster comics, and they were both superhero and monster comics, because the first issue of the Fantastic Four, they were like superheroes, but it was a monster story. It was all these monsters coming up through the ground, attacking New York, being fought off by the Fantastic Four. And the Fantastic Four was practically a swipe of the Challengers of the Unknown, but with superpowers. And of course, Jack Kirby was one of the creators of the Challengers of the Unknown for DC. And of course, even the first appearance of the Hulk, and of course, all monster comics. Then with the Thing in the Fantastic Four, he was a monster, and the Incredible Hulk. His first appearance was basically a monster story. He just wasn't as gigantic as some of the others, and that drew on, and even the Hulk drew on several of elements from several of the monster stories. And I think I've mentioned at least two of them before. And then, of course, the Amazing Spider-Man, his first appearance in, what was it, Amazing Fantasy? Is that 15? Is that the right title? I can't remember right now. And of course, while he wasn't a monster, Jack Kirby did the cover, and the cover made it look like he was a monster. So even the Marvel Universe has a long tradition of monsters. Okay, get in here, and I'll just skim through some of this other stuff. Happy birthday, darling! It says about but I wanted to mention this splash page, John Byrne, and it's great big candle, great big birthday cake with all these candles and his families and friends. This was the time shortly after the Secret Wars, I think, and Ben Grimm is the Thing is off planet doing his own thing. He's got his own title, and She-Hulk has taken his place on the Fantastic Four, and at this time she is dating Wyatt Wingfoot. He was a friend, of course, and at this time Johnny Storm is dating Alicia Masters, because this is after she and Ben broke up. Of course, later they get back together again, and I think they're in the process of getting married in the comics. I'm not positive. I don't came up with it. And then their little son, Reed and Sue's son, Franklin. He's just a little toddler here. I like that because it's 4.5 on his T-shirt. But I just wanted to mention here because I love this outfit that Sue is wearing here. It is just so beautiful, and the detail, all the little design work here. And I've always had a thing for these leg of mutton sleeves. Beautiful detail, the lace work and everything in there. It's just beautifully rendered. And then here we see Reed in his laboratory. He was doing something he completely forgot. Yeah, thank you very much. He does something all funny for his boy, because he didn't think he had Franklin had a suggestion. Didn't think he could blow out all the candles, and he did. Yay, yay, Reed! Yay, happy birthday, Reed! I've never counted all those candles, so I don't know how old it is. And then they're off talking, they're all having cake and stuff, and she's saying that Reed looks troubled and all this other stuff, and says, yeah, he's discovered there are gaps in his memory. And it's nice. I mean, this could have just been talking heads for 2 pages, but John Byrne made it interesting. And said he can't, he has gaps in his memory, little things he can't remember, and big gaps too. And said really the oldest significant thing in his memory is an event that happened shortly before their rocket trip, which gave birth to them as the Fantastic Four. And this is where it starts recounting. They're driving, and of course, it even has the old-fashioned, more 50s era car and suit, hairstyles, all the styles, everything reflecting that period. And I saw the spaceship landing while they're out in the wood, out driving, which is kind of reminiscent of Barney and Betty Hill abduction situation, if you're familiar with UFO lore. This thing lands, and this big old thing gets out, and he goes, I am Gormu, while Reed tries to approach him and be friends. And the whole thing is told very much like the Lee Kirby giant monster stories. And personally, I prefer when the monsters aren't aliens, or aliens come to Earth to invade and all this other stuff. And but I don't care. I like it. Look, he even made him Reed look more like Kirby would have drawn him back then, just as the monster is very Kirby-esque. And says he's here to just check the planet's defenses and take over. And he starts growing, and he gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then he's being attacked by fighter planes and stuff, and even the old-fashioned aircraft from the time. He gets bigger and bigger, and since he's already working at a missile base and working with the military, Reed talks with them, consulting. They consult him, and it's getting closer to the base, and we've got to stop him. He's terrible, and talks with the president and all this other stuff. He's got some ideas. He goes back to the site, looking at the technology, seeing if he can find something he can use as a really cool, again, Kirby-ish work on the technology. And then he discovers something, the footprints. Even though the monster is bigger, gets bigger and bigger as he grows, and should be getting more mass. His footprints should be getting deeper, but they're not. He's got the conclusion here, and he said he's got this thing that's going to give him more power, because realizes that the more power he receives, the bigger this monster gets. And then Ben Grimm tries to stop him. Reed, of all things, slugs Ben. What the heck? And then the monster's right there, and he zaps him with a gizmo he just created. So, what? A weapon directed against me? No, not a weapon. A power beam. Yes, more power. But wait, tell me wrong. Yeah, he's growing bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and his mass never changed. As he's getting more power, he grows larger, but he's become less dense. Until finally, he's less dense than the atmosphere, and he just continues to grow and fades away into nothingness. And the Gormu is defeated by the genius of Reed Richards. And then I said, okay, cool. Oh, yeah, I see what you're doing there. Sorry, we doubted you and all this stuff. Then has the rocket. Okay, and that's all for that part of the story. And that's all I really wanted to focus on, but I will give you a little overview. He's trying to find something else out about these gaps in his memory. The whole Fantastic Four flies out to California, to Central City, and his family's mansion that was owned by his father. The butler and housekeeper and his wife, and look at the beautiful detail in the design work for the interior of that house. And they talk about, we've been seeing ghosts for the last several months, and Reed's got some conclusions based on what they say they've seen and how often they are. And then they go down to his father's lab, and She-Hulk, she's ready to smash in. No, don't do that. It'd ruin it. Plus, he'd probably have booby traps. So they, with using his brain and the powers of Sue and Johnny, they managed to get the door open safely and without setting off booby traps. And there it is, and I see this thing. This is like their the time machine that they had gotten from Doctor Doom. And see, all this is setting up for a bigger story down down the road. And I'd like to get to see this second issue, but issue after this, and I never have. And it's Cowboys and Idioms. So I don't know where that's going. So that's all we've got for that. Have fun with the Fantastic Four fighting giant monsters. Ha ha ha! Love the giant monsters. Okay, thanks for joining me. Please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. And remember, comics are art.